Before he was the planet's most unwilling diplomat, David Astor was just a dad. A single dad, which meant he was a master of logistics, a short-order cook, and the sole audience for his 4-year-old daughter, Lily. Their life was perfectly ordinary. Set in a small suburban house with a slightly too big mortgage and an overgrown garden. David worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, a job that gave him the flexibility to be there for Lily, to never miss a scraped knee or a new crayon masterpiece. His world was small, and it was perfect. The language began as all the best things between them did, as a game. Lily, like most toddlers, was inventing her own words. Instead of correcting her, David joined in. He had an ear for the strange cadence of her baby talk and began to build on it, creating rules, a syntax, a flow. It was a language of clicks. From the back of the throat, soft whistles that sounded like birds, and low, resonant hums that seemed to vibrate deep in your chest. It was their secret. It was the language of love. On an impulse, driven by pure fatherly pride, he posted a video. In the clip, he's at the kitchen table asking Lily, in their special language, if she liked her lunch. The sounds he makes are utterly alien. Lily, her mouth smeared with applesauce, responds with a perfect, complex series of clicks and a happy squeal. She understood. To David, it was magic. He titled it, "Just a Chat with My Daughter in Our Secret Language." The internet soon discovered it. At first, the comments were kind. "Cute dad, that's adorable." Then, a popular account retweeted it, asking, "Is this dude trying to summon Cthulhu or just order a pizza?" The floodgates opened. Alien Language Dad became a global phenomenon. The video was remixed, auto-tuned, and turned into a dance track. Late-night hosts played the clip while wiping away tears of laughter. Linguists were brought on news channels, explaining how it shared no structure with any known human language. Psychologists voiced gentle concern for Lily's development, their words dripping with condescension. David Astor became a punchline. Strangers would imitate the clicks on the street. Memes put his face on alien invasion movie posters. He tried to explain in a follow-up post, writing about the simple joy of connecting with his daughter, and how she was a bright, happy child who was also learning English perfectly. But nobody wanted context. They wanted the joke dot, so he retreated. He deleted his social media, kept his head down, and focused on his small world of two. He and Lily still spoke their language, but only within the walls of their home. It became their sanctuary again, a shield against a world that had laughed at their most private creation. He thought the world had forgotten him. He was wrong. The world was about to need him more than it could possibly imagine. Those first 12 hours after the ships appeared were a study in global panic. Stock markets evaporated. Communication lines, where they worked, were choked with terrified goodbyes. On the world stage, a strange temporary unity was born of shared terror. Old enemies patched into the same encrypted channels, sharing useless data about the silent giants hanging over their cities. They tried everything. They broadcast greetings in every known language, from English to ancient Sumerian. They sent mathematical constants, the value of pi, the structure of human DNA. They played Batch and the Beatles. The ships offered nothing in return. They weren't ignoring humanity. They were simply waiting, and the signal came, appearing on every device at once. David Astor's kitchen. The raw footage of him and Lily looped endlessly inside Cheyenne Mountain. The air grew thick. General Marcus Thorne, a man who had dedicated his life to predictable threats, stared at the main screen in utter confusion. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "Some kind of cyber attic?" An analyst shook her head, her eyes wide with terror. "Sir, the signal isn't coming through our networks. It's generating on them, at the source." "Get me the source of that video," Thorne barked. "Who?" Is that man? Where is he? And what in God's name does he have to do with those things in our sky? The search was surprisingly short. The internet had already documented David Astor's life in excruciating detail. Within minutes, General Thorne was watching a highlight reel of David's public humiliation. "So, they're up there in City Killers," Thorne muttered, "and they're asking for a clown." "Or," a quiet voice said beside him, "they're asking for a translator." Thorne turned to Dr. Aries Thorne, his estranged brother and a theoretical linguist, brought in as a long shot. Aries was staring at the video of David and Lily with an intensity that chilled the general. "That's not a language, Aries. It's gibberish." "It's gibberish by human standards," Aries replied, his eyes never leaving the screen. "You're assuming the beings up there operate on human standards. A poor assumption when facing a superior force. That man and his child are communicating intelligently, and it seems that while we were all laughing, the visitors were listening. The order was given. 2 unmarked helicopters lifted from a hidden airfield. Their destination, a quiet suburban street and the home of the most ridiculed father in the world. David Astor's quiet life was about to be shattered for a second time, first by laughter, and now by the terrifying knock of a world desperate for answers he didn't know he had. The knock on the door was so gentle, so polite, it was terrifying. David, who was building a pillow fort to distract Lily from the eerie twilight cast by the ship overhead, froze. He peered through the peephole. 2 figures in dark suits stood unnaturally still, radiating an authority that had nothing to do with a warrant. "David Astor," one of them said, "we need you to come with us. Please, bring your daughter." Panic seized him. His first instinct was to hide Lily, to run. But where? The men outside were just messengers. The real threat floated over the entire planet. He looked at Lily peeking out from behind the sofa and understood that hiding was no longer an option. The journey was a silent blur. He and Lily were escorted into a black SUV, then a helicopter flying low and fast over a world holding its breath. They landed at the mouth of a tunnel bored deep into a mountain. Cheyenne Mountain. He was marched through corridors, a bewildered civilian in a world of crisp uniforms and hushed, urgent conversations. He was led into the command center, a 3-story cavern dominated by a giant screen. And on that screen, on a maddening loop, was his kitchen. His face, his daughter, Mr. Astor. General Marcus Thorne stood before him, a man carved from granite and impatience. "I'll be blunt. We are in a crisis of unprecedented scale. For reasons beyond my comprehension, the hostiles in orbit are broadcasting your home video. Are you in communication with them? Are you some kind of collaborator?" "Collaborator?" David shot back. "I'm a graphic designer. That video was a game. A joke the global defense apparatus does not find funny," Thorne countered. "Which brings me to my next question. That noise you are making. Are you a linguist?" "No. I just made it up. For my daughter." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "You made up a language that is now the sole focus of a potential alien invasion." Just then, the other man, Dr. Aries Thorne, stepped forward. "Mr. Astor," he said gently, "my name is Dr. Aries Thorne. We are not accusing you of anything. We are desperate. We believe the visitors are trying to talk to us, and you're the only one they seem to be listening to." At that moment, a new sound filled the room. A live signal, directly from the ships. A series of soft clicks and a low, resonant hum. No one in the room understood it, except 2 people. In David's arms, Lily, who had been silent and overwhelmed, looked up. She pointed a tiny finger at the screen and uttered a single, clear sound. A click, then a soft whistle. Every head in the room turned to her. David's blood ran cold. He knew that sound. In their private language, it was the simplest word of all. The word for hello. The sound from the ship repeated. Click, click. A pattern. Aris Thorne looked at David, his eyes wide. Mr. Astor, what is it saying? David listened, his mind racing. It wasn't identical to their language, but the structure, the soul of it, was the same. It was like hearing a familiar dialect from a distant valley. He understood the intent. A question. The simplest question. He swallowed hard. It's asking, he whispered, if we are here. General Thorne stared at him. And what does that mean? It's a call, David said, a terrifying understanding dawning on him. Like someone knocking on a door and waiting to see if anyone is home. He looked from the screen to his daughter and back. The language wasn't a joke. It wasn't his invention. He had somehow, impossibly, tapped into something ancient. Something real. And now, the owners of that language had come knocking. Cheyenne Mountain transformed from a military command center into the world's most high-stakes linguistics lab. In a small, soundproofed room, David Astor sat with a headset on, a microphone. In front of him, and the weight of 7 billion lives on his shoulders. Lily was in an adjoining room with Dr. Thorne, supposedly playing with toys, but Aris was watching her, convinced she was as much a key to this as her father. The first exchange was simple. The ship broadcast its call. Are you there? Guided by Aris, David leaned into the microphone and responded with the word for yes from their language, a complex two-part hum. After a full minute of silence, the ship responded with a new series of sounds. A different question. David closed his eyes and listened. It's asking, are you complete? Or maybe, are you whole? It's a biological term. Like asking if a plant has reached maturity. The distinction is crucial, David. Aris's voice crackled in his headset. Ask for clarification. This was the first true test. David formulated a question using the grammatical rules he'd invented for a game. What do you mean by whole? The reply was instantaneous and complex. They're describing a sequence, David said finally, struggling for the words. A pattern. It's genetic. They aren't asking if our civilization is whole. They're asking if our biology is. They're asking if the code has been fully expressed. A German biologist appeared on one of the screens. General, she said, her voice trembling. Ask him if the code has a name. David relayed the question. The answer came back with a single, clear, resonant sound, a word David had never used, but understood on an instinctual level. He took off the headset, his hands shaking. They call it the first language, he said to the room. They say it isn't. Spoken. It's awoken. They say it's been sleeping inside us. This wasn't a first contact. It was a reunion. Over the next few hours, David learned that the visitors had no name for themselves. They were simply speakers. Humanity to them were the echoes. Their ships weren't weapons, but laboratories and archives. Had come because David's silly home video was the first broadcast of the first language they had detected in generations. A cosmic flare signaling that the echoes were beginning to remember. But General Thorne was a man who believed in threats. It's a trick, he insisted to his staff, a Trojan horse. They pacify us with stories while they prepare to lower the boom. The breaking point came when the speaker sent a message intended only for David. They're asking about the little speaker, he translated, his voice breaking. They mean Lily. They say her voice is clearer, pure. They want to speak to her. General Thorne's face hardened. Absolutely not. We are not putting a 4-year-old on an open channel to a potential hostile force. They're not hostile. David slammed his hand on the table. They aren't a threat. They're family or something like it. They're waiting for a sign from us that we understand, that we're ready to be whole. And if you're wrong, Mr. Astor, Thorne countered. If you are being played, and I put that little girl on the line, her voice could be the go code for an attack that wipes us out. The answer is no. The channel to the ships went dead. The silence was more menacing than any threat. The world had its translator, but the conversation had stalled. The visitors wanted to speak to the one person they military was sworn to protect, and a terrified father was caught in the middle. The silence stretched for 3 agonizing hours. In the pressure cooker of Cheyenne Mountain, it felt like an eternity. The ships hadn't left. They were waiting. It was a test. "He's wrong, Aris," David said, his head in his hands. He was in a small briefing room with Dr. Thorne. The general had refused him access to Lily, placing her under the care of a military doctor. It felt like she was a prisoner. "He's thinking like a soldier," David continued. "This isn't a negotiation. It's a diagnostic. They're checking for a sign of life, and I'm only giving them half of what they need." "Explain it to me again, David," Aris said gently. "Everything you've pieced together." David took a deep breath. "It's not just a language," he began. "It's an instruction set, a biological protocol. That's why I could understand it, and why Lily is even better at it. It's in U.S., maybe not all of us. Maybe a specific lineage, a bloodline that carried this dormant gene." He looked at Aris, pleading for him to understand. "Think of it like this. Scientists call a huge portion of our DNA junk DNA. What if it's not junk? What if it's a backup file? A message from our ancestors, not human ancestors. The ones who came before. The speakers, they're gardeners. They planted a seed, and they've come back to see how the garden has grown. The language is the key that proves the seed has sprouted. It's a biological handshake. When I speak it, my body produces a certain resonance. They can read that signal, and they can tell mine is incomplete, because I had to learn the language. Lily didn't." He finally looked up, the terrible, beautiful truth laid bare. She's the proof of concept, the harvest. They don't want to give her an order. They want to receive the final part of the handshake. The signal that says, "We are here. We are whole. We remember," armed with a new, terrifying clarity. David walked back into the command center and stood directly before General Thorne. "General," David said, his voice steady, "you're going to lose this planet because you're fighting the wrong war. This isn't a battle of arms. It's a test of trust, and you are failing it." Thorne turned slowly. "Your opinion is noted, Mr. Astor." "This isn't an opinion," David pressed. "It's a translation. They've gone silent because they asked to see our future, and you've hidden her away. They offered a handshake, and you showed them a fist. They see me, a man who had to relearn what was lost, but they hear her, even in silence. She is the native tongue. She is proof that their entire purpose for coming here was not in vain. Every second you keep her from them, you are telling the oldest intelligence we have ever met that we are broken, that the experiment of Earth has failed." He took a step closer. "I am her father. I would burn down the world to protect her. I am telling you, the greatest danger to her, and to all of us, is not in that microphone. It's in your fear." The general's stony facade began to crack. He looked at the faces of world leaders on the screens, a mix of fear and dawning hope. He looked at his brother, who nodded slowly. He looked at the silent ships that held all the cards. Perhaps it was time to play the only one humanity had left. "Bring the child," General Thorne said, his voice raspy with the weight of the world. When Lily was brought into the room, she wasn't scared. She didn't see the generals or the screens. She saw her daddy, and she ran to him. He knelt and held her, burying his face in her hair. "Hey, sweetie," he whispered. "Remember our game? Our special way of talking?" Lily nodded, her eyes bright. "The tickle talk," she called it. "There are some people who want to play," David said, his heart hammering. "They're a long way away, but they can hear us. They speak it too, and they really want to say hello to you." He settled her on his lap. In front of the microphone, the channel was open. David leaned in first, sending a simple message. "I have someone who wishes to speak." The response from the ship was immediate. A cascade of sound filled with a tone that everyone in the room understood without translation. Joyous anticipation. "Your turn, sweetie," David whispered. "Just say, hello." Lily leaned toward the microphone. She didn't say the simple hello a toddler would. She uttered a full sentence, a string of clicks and whistles, far more complex than anything David had ever taught her. It was a sound that came not from memory, but from instinct. From every ship in orbit, a light bloomed, a soft, warm, golden glow that bathed the planet in the warmth of 1,000 sunrises. Then came a sound, not through speakers, but inside. The mind of every human on Earth. It wasn't a voice. It was a feeling. A chorus of welcome, of relief, of 1,000,000,000 years of solitude finally ending. The screens in the command center flickered, now showing star charts, molecular diagrams, and architectural blueprints. It was a library of knowledge, offered freely. The speakers were opening their archives. David held his daughter, tears streaming down his face as he felt the pure intent behind it all. "You are whole," it seemed to say. Welcome home. The world was transformed. It wasn't an invasion or a surrender. It was a graduation. Humanity learned that life on Earth was no accident, but a cherished act of creation by a nomadic race that sowed life across the galaxy. They had been waiting for the echoes to mature, for the reawakening of the first language, the genetic memory of their shared origin. David Astor, the viral joke, became a teacher. He and Lily, and a handful of others they soon discovered who, carried the same dormant gene, became the bridge between two worlds. They taught humanity how to speak the first language, and in doing so, how to access the dormant knowledge within their own DNA. General Thorne became one of David's strongest allies, his military mind now dedicated to the logistics of a global renaissance. The ships remained in orbit, their golden light a constant, reassuring presence in the sky. The story of David and Lily became a new global myth, a reminder of how a private act of love between a father and his daughter became the key that unlocked humanity's future. It was the story of how the world laughed at a man for speaking nonsense, right up until the day that nonsense became the only thing that made sense in the entire universe.